David Hertel with you. Critics are calling out new regulations known as the Carbon Tax 2.0, and in just 3 weeks, this new tax is set to take effect, gradually replacing the most polluting automotive fuels with cleaner alternatives. It will require a minimum percentage of biofuels in gasoline and diesel. This is starting July 1st. And the hope is that this new regulation will cut the carbon intensity, especially automotive fuels sold on the Canadian market. To tell us more, I'm joined by Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Franco, thank you for joining us this morning.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So, explain the tax.
Yeah, so this is going to be the second carbon tax, this one implemented by the federal government, buried in fuel regulations. Here's how it works. So the federal government is trying to require producers of fuel to reduce the carbon content of that fuel. If they can't meet those requirements, then they're going to have to pay this second carbon tax, purchase these credits, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But it's not just the producers that are going to actually feel the pain here. Independent economists, including the government's own independent budget watchdog, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, have made it clear that the cost of this is going to fall on the consumers. The PBO estimates that this will increase the price of gasoline by 2030 by up to another 17 cents per liter. It will cost the average family, so not just the big rigs. It'll cost the average family in Quebec about $436 by 2030. And we can get into this a little bit more, but some of the damaging parts of this regulation is that it's regressive. It'll hurt the people who are already struggling the most.
Well, Franco, shouldn't there be some sort of way to incentivize the companies to actually use cleaner fuels? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but this is kind of like, it's basically based on the cap and trade system to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And that's been in place in Quebec for 10 years now. It's working in California and other jurisdictions. These types of systems have worked on specific fields in incentivizing companies to use cleaner alternatives. So if not that, what else?
Right, a lot to break down here, yeah. and hold me accountable if I don't answer
but
all those
I'm just trying to see, if not that, what can we do to use cleaner fuels?
So the first thing that I would say is, like in Montreal, when you go to the pumps, you are already before July 1, before the second carbon tax, you're already paying 6 different types of gas taxes, 6 different types of carbon taxes, essentially, already costing 65 cents per liter of gasoline. So I don't see how another tax on top of that is really going to do the work here. Let me go back to the PBO, and again, I'll get to the second part of your question, but let me go back to the PBO, and because he looked at this question, and here's a quote directly from his report, quote, "Canada's own emissions are not large enough to materially impact climate change." Okay, and the reason being is that Canada, of course, is 1.5% of global emissions. British Columbia, by the way, has had the highest carbon tax in Canada for years. Essentially, the theory behind it is exactly what you laid out, but we've seen emissions continue to go up in BC, essentially year after year after year, leading into the pandemic when everything was restricted. And the reason that carbon taxes actually don't provide the incentive in the real world is twofold. Number one is necessities, right? If you do rely on gasoline and diesel, you really do rely on gasoline and diesel to get to work, or natural gas in other parts of Canada to heat your home. But the second one, which is probably the bigger point here, is that with this global issue, you also have to look at what your global partners are doing. 80% of countries around the world, including many of the large ones like the United States, do not have these types of carbon taxes in place. Yeah. So that's why these types of carbon taxes in Canada don't materially impact climate change.
No, that point I get. If Canada's the only player doing this and nobody else is, that's going to be a big issue. So on that, I understand. But at the same time, I mean, how are we going to be reducing our emissions? That's the question.
2 ways. I totally agree with you. That is the question. I just had to set the stage.
No, okay.
So here's the two ways and that I think that we can do. Love to hear your thoughts on this, but I think there really are two ways. Because this is a global issue, and because Canada makes up such a small percentage or such a small drop in the bucket of global emissions, I truly believe that we do have to think global. And how can we in Canada set up the world to reduce emissions, right? So I think there's two ways. Number one, I think we have to displace dirtier forms of fuel around the world with cleaner forms of fuel in Canada, right? And I know Quebec is a leader in that, right? When you talk about hydro and stuff of that nature, I know in the past there has been some issues exporting Quebec energy, even in the northeast of the United States. I know there's been some barriers there, but there's certainly barriers in Western Canada, even just displacing dirtier forms of fuel like coal with cleaner natural gas. So that's number one. But number two, and this is how all industrialized countries like Canada can really play a part, instead of raising taxes on Canadian families, let's look at how we can produce technology here at home to further refine the quality of our fuel, but then to also export that technology abroad.
Solid points. I understand your position. Very clear. As always, thank you so much for your time, Franco. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation.